Hello and welcome. Above the book is a form of expression in which a fixed melody is accompanied through improvisation. Point and counterpoint, leading to a greater awareness, leading to something more, something unique, and something that is above the book. I'd like to welcome Ebbe Altberg back again for our 11th annual VWBPE conference and above the book conversation about education and Second Life. We also have Brett Atwood, Senior Manager for Marketing. Ebbe and Brett, thank you and welcome to Above the Book.
Thank you. Great to be here again.
Thank you.
So we've had so many questions submitted from the community, and it's going to be tough to get through them all. As a matter of fact, there's no possible way we could get through them all. I'd like to thank everybody that's here for contributing to today's conversation. There were a lot of really good questions that were submitted, and we had to pick and choose from amongst a number of them, and I'm hoping that we're going to get to some really good ones. So I'd like to start off with the first question, being directly on education, since this is what we are all here to discuss. And my first question for you is simply this: How does Linden Lab view the importance of education and the placement of its products when it comes to education?
Well, I think it's quite core to the whole idea of what Second Life is. It's always been a very strong core audience in the educational space. The platform itself lends itself to supporting or solving or augmenting a huge array of educational use cases or scenarios. And sometimes we're not even, completely aware of all the things that you do or are able to do. Because the platform does support so many possibilities to use the platform. So I think what's probably the most important thing is to make sure that we hear your needs and what can we do to make Second Life an even more valuable educational resource and community than it currently is. So I think it just comes with the territory of being the type of platform that it is, that it makes a huge amount of sense for education. Maybe we can chat about Sansar as well. Sansar is a different product that supports virtual reality hardware, but it's still in early beta. But it's it's another tool or another platform for you guys to experiment with in addition to Second Life as you see fit. So yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time with Jeremy Bailenson at Stanford, and just the research he's doing and just understanding how virtual reality and virtual, the ability for people to express themselves or experience things in virtual worlds and virtual reality, and how powerful of a mechanism or powerful of a medium that is to help people both teach and learn and train across almost everything that human beings do. So yeah, it's very near and dear to us, and so yeah, that's my first thoughts on it.
Yeah, you mentioned Bailenson, which is actually kind of interesting because that sort of ties into the second question that I have here, which is about planned partnerships and opportunities for Linden Lab to be working with other groups. Are there things that are coming about as a result of partnerships, and are there other opportunities where educational groups can be more involved with Linden Labs?
Yeah, it'll probably be more on the marketing side. So it's probably a great question for Brett. For those who you don't know, Pete, Pete Linden, that many of you have known for many years, he moved on to an interesting, fascinating role over at Facebook in the field of artificial intelligence. And so now we have Brett, who I work with very closely, who runs marketing for Second Life. I think it would be important for many of you to connect with Brett over time to figure out how we can collaborate and help each other become even more successful in the area of education. Brett, do you have any additional thoughts?
I do. I want to really add also that the education community is something I'm particularly close to. For those that don't know my background, I actually also do teach and have been an educator for actually 15 years, and currently teach in the journalism area, various classes over the years at Washington State University. So I'm very connected to that community as far as caring about it and how virtual worlds in general can be used. So yeah. Happy to connect with anyone, and we have lots of things going on to support that community already. We do have oops, I'm being told I need to turn on in-world voice. One sec. Let's try this. Sorry. All right.
Start again.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. A little glitch there. I'll start from the top, but just basically going to say thank you. For those that don't know, I do have a background in education as well as the tech sector. So I actually have been an educator for 15 years at various places. And currently I teach a class at Washington State University. And I've used virtual worlds in the education sector quite a bit. We did like a mixed reality event there a few years ago. We brought in folks both in world and then in the physical world as well, and of course I've used it in the classroom, as many of you have. So I'm a huge advocate for it, and in terms of stepping into these new areas of responsibilities, I'm looking forward to finding opportunities to connect more with that community. I also want to point out and remind folks, although I'm sure many of you know already, we do have a couple of specific areas to support the education community. For example, the SLED distribution list, for those that aren't aware of that, is still active. We have actually over 5,000 members that communicate with each other via that email address, or that listserv. In addition, we have the community forum on the secondlife.com website where people can connect as well. But for anyone who's interested in reaching out or learning more about the education initiatives, you can reach out to me directly and or connect via any of those avenues.
Awesome. In terms of research and development, is there anything specific that's going on that maybe you could share with us?
Well, first of all, because it keeps coming up, because we're working on Sansar, people start asking, or have we stopped investing in Second Life? And like, further, it couldn't be further from the truth. Just so everybody knows that Second Life and Sansar are two independent teams that are completely dedicated to each of those products. Each of those teams, Second Life is if you just think about R&D and support is close to 100 people. And so it's a fairly large organization across product and operations and customer service and engineering and data, and then not even including the people that work in finance and compliance and all these other aspects of it, what we're doing. So we're still really serious about our investment in Second Life, and the team is very motivated and dedicated to get growth in Second Life. So it's not something that we're just, letting run its course or milking for revenues or anything like that. It's active investments, and I'm sure many of you have noticed a number of the things that have happened over the last several years as far as improving performance, getting out a 64-bit viewer that even further improved performance, and continuing to add features, whether it's Animesh that could maybe be useful in educational use cases, more environmental enhancements, so it's easier for people to have control over the environment in their parcel or in their region. So it's continuous investment across a number of areas. And another area that's just high level we're really thinking hard about sort of the economic model of Second Life. We share a belief inside the lab here that land is quite expensive, and so we're constantly looking for ways to lower land prices and find other ways to monetize or find revenues. So I think you will see us trying to sort of shift from what I would say high real estate taxes to more consumption taxes or fees, to create sort of an environment where it's easy for people to create and own experiences, and then we participating more in sort of all the transactions that take place. So those are things. So we just, as you saw yesterday, we lowered pricing on mainland by 10% while giving people more land to play with. We also did a couple of years ago, or maybe less than a couple of years ago, a buy-down program for private estates to help people on the pricing side of, or the cost side of land. And we're going to continue to, we've had also once or twice, increase some of the fees in other areas, like redeeming your dollars back out. Some of those fees have increased, and so we're going to continue to look for ways to sort of make it more affordable for people to own land in Second Life. And hopefully all of that will benefit all of you as well, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah. So is there anything going to be happening then? Because I mean, you mentioned the decrease, especially in the mainland pricing and such. Is there anything happening in the next little while with regards to educational pricing on full regions, or?
So we're half price at the moment, which is a pretty good deal. We have looked at whether we could go even further, and I would hope we could go even further. That's not something I can commit to at this point in time. But as we continue to try and reshift, I would say, our revenue sources from land to other fees, subscriptions, and transaction fees, etc., I hope over that transition we can't snap it all at once. That would be like an incredible risk on the whole economy, if you will. So we have to do it in steps, but I'm hoping along the way we can find ways to make it even more affordable for the educational pricing as well.
Yeah. The other thing that one of the other questions that came up, and this is sort of tied to the idea of pricing as well, is there's been a number of articles that have come out which have talked about the movement of Second Life to the cloud.
Yeah.
And clearly this is a massive engineering effort. So a couple of questions that we had were basically, can we find out what's happening with regards to work in progress on this? And what are the benefits that you're hoping to obtain from doing that type of a move?
Yeah, so it's a huge effort. I mean, right now the Second Life grid, as you might think of it, or is a sort of a proprietary setup in a hosting facility that we sort of have customized for the purpose of what we're doing, which made sense, a decade and a half ago. But these days, with the services from Google's and Amazon's and Microsoft's of cloud infrastructure, it makes a lot more sense to shift our technology to be on top of those cloud infrastructures instead of having our own. There's some benefits to us that it turns it into, there's less capital expenditure to sort of have to buy all the equipment and doing all the maintenance on that. You kind of pay for what you use. I mean, Second Life, once we bought a piece of hardware, we have to sit on it, whether it's being utilized or not, whereas you can sort of more dynamically scale your consumption as necessary when you use something like AWS, which hopefully will well, which we believe will actually ultimately reduce cost for us, and then obviously we hope to be able to pass that on to customers. Other benefits we foresee is gives us more flexibility in what type of server hardware we can utilize, and so there might be different tiers of on the server side as to how much performance you want, and it would be easier for us to sort of let you choose maybe an event like this to run on a super high-powered server that would give you, maybe the ability to have even more higher concurrency of visitors and higher performance. But maybe you only want that sometimes and not all the time. So more flexibility and sort of being able to choose kind of a hardware spec that sort of dynamically makes sense for the particular use case or the region in question. Another one could also be geographic distribution of the server infrastructure. And today we're located in the US, and which means that people from Australia or Asia or whatever or Europe have to travel quite a ways, which is hundreds of milliseconds of extra latency. And so if you want to have a very dedicated community in Australia or somewhere, we can start to maybe distribute our server infrastructure to be more closer to where the actual customers of those regions are, which would make things more performant. Maybe we could do something similar to what Sansar is doing. Sansar sort of spins up and shuts down servers dynamically. So if no one is visiting a particular region, or we call them scenes in Sansar, but a server instance, after just a few minutes on Sansar, we can basically shut that server down and just park that whole experience on disk, which is much cheaper than constantly running it 24/7. Some experiences might want to have continuous persistence over time, and maybe that's one type of pricing model for a sort of always on type of scenario. Or maybe others would be fine with, hey, I'm only using this for a few hours in a class, a few times a week or something, and if that can spin up in a few seconds, and then I basically just need to pay for the time that I'm utilizing it, those could be potential options for us to explore. But this is a huge project of just transitioning our infrastructure from where it's currently at to a cloud infrastructure like that is going to take all of this year and then some. We've already progressed. There's a huge number of different types of services and databases and systems and all kinds of things that piecemeal will sort of shift over to a cloud infrastructure. But to get the whole thing done, it's going to take this year and then some. And then once we're just having moved over with and things working hopefully just a bit better than what we're now, we can start to think about how to start taking advantage of that in various ways that I described earlier.
Yeah. The scary thing is that once we start talking about technology, we could go down a massive rat hole with regards to that. So I sort of want to bring it back to education a little bit, if I may. Because I could chew up the entire hour just talking about technology with you. But coming back to education, I mean, does Linden Lab have any specific plans for specifically promoting education in Second Life or Sansar?
I will let Brett speak to this a bit. I mean, at a high level, the team is very focused on growth, both revenue and user growth. And so, education would be a tough area for us to spend money on, so to speak, to get significant growth in volume of users. But that doesn't mean we don't want to make sure we help out in every way we can to make sure that education participates in this growth and can be a growing segment of Second Life. But maybe Brett can speak some more about it.
Yeah, actually, I want to point out, I'll put in chat for those that are here locally, there's place pages that just launched in the last few months been quietly sort of being tested. And some people may not know about place pages, and it has specific value for really anyone who wants to promote their presence in SL. So I encourage people to go to places.secondlife.com. And if you don't know what a place page is and why it's relevant to the to this question, it's essentially a new sort of self-service promotional tool. You can use this to essentially quickly assemble a promotional page for your Second Life presence. You can tie events calendar activities to it. You can do actually a 360-degree sort of slider or image at the top. I'll put an example of one again in chat, and we can share these separately for people that are not in the immediate chat room, of course. But I really encourage people to check this out. It's just sort of rolling out still here. So again, not many people know about this, but I think from the educational community in particular, there's a lot that can be done with this. You can use this to sort of promote your presence in world, and then edit it and curate it to your own liking and not be dependent on others. So that's one new thing that we've rolled out. Of course, we're looking at other opportunities as well, but that's one I thought I'd share that's available today.
Excellent.
And again, I would just like to reiterate that we want to make sure that we have a communications channel with the educational community, and that we don't lose anything, or let's say we make it even stronger and better what it's been in the past, to make sure that we hear you as far as what your collective priorities are as to what would really make this a better resource, a better product, a better platform for you to use in the educational space. So we're listening.
Okay. Well, with regards to that, actually, this question keeps coming up, and I'm going to ask it again, and I realize that we've talked a little bit about this over the years, but is there a possibility of bringing back the community liaisons for education communities, libraries, and nonprofits? I mean, years ago, there used to be dedicated employees from Linden Labs who would sort of work with specific groups, so like music industry and the arts industry and the education industry, and I think there's still a real desire for that type of engagement with the lab. Are you guys potentially looking at bringing that back at some point?
Well, maybe not dedicated as you describe it, but what we have done over this, last several months is to actually further more cleanly separate the Second Life and Sansar organizations. We used to have more resources that were shared, that sort of worked on both. And what we've done is, just on the marketing side, for example, we now have Brett, we have Jen, or Ziola, and also an open headcount that's about to be filled. So we'll have 3 100% dedicated to Second Life resources in the marketing team. So that's kind of a good step. Don't think we don't currently have plans to have even more resources, but with those 3 people being 100% dedicated to Second Life and not splitting their duties between Second Life and Sansar, they will be able to give more attention to a broader set of initiatives and opportunities, including education. So things have improved, but maybe not to the degree that you're asking for.
Right. Well, speaking of Sansar, could you give us a little bit of your long-term vision and commitment to Second Life in relationship to Sansar, and where you sort of see both platforms going over the next while?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities between Second Life and Sansar in that those are both platforms for users to create experiences and then invite whomever they want into those experiences and have, shared interaction with each other and the content. A big reason for us to invest in Sansar is sort of the future of VR. The way Second Life was built, unfortunately, is not the way you would really go about things if you want to really take advantage of the virtual reality hardware that's coming out. you have some incredibly high performance requirements for getting 90 frames per second, for example, for VR, and we wanted to sort of capitalize on the future of this new hardware, of being sort of completely immersed inside the world, and unfortunately, sort of bending and Second Life to meet that would not have been possible. So I see it as two independent products, where each of those tombs will sort of march to their own beliefs as to what they can do to best satisfy their customers. And I also believe that a lot of customers will use both for different situation scenarios. Sansar is not trying to be Second Life 2.0. Second Life will be Second Life 2.0 over time, unless we're already on. I guess we're on 15.0 now, and Sansar will sort of do its own thing. And so there's kind of in the Venn diagram between the two, there's big overlap, but there's also specific things that are very unique to each of those two platforms that would make each of those, better for certain things. And so that's how I kind of think about it in general. And where we're going, well, we have a belief that we've just kind of scratched the surface with Second Life, both where Second Life can go and where Sansar can go, in enabling people from around the world to have virtual experiences where they can come together and have social interaction with each other and the world. And that then kind of covers almost everything human beings do, almost. This meeting we're having now, school, meeting with family, friends, co-workers. I mean, if you think about what humans do, we kind of travel in physical space from one space to another throughout our days, from our bedrooms to living rooms to kitchens to offices to clubs to entertainment venues to museums to churches, to all of these things. And all of those things, and a lot of things that are not possible in physical space can happen in virtual space. So we and you are sort of the early pioneers in this field, but we think we've still just sort of scratched the surface of this. So we're very enthusiastic and optimistic about the future as hardware and networking and sort of a whole generation of people growing up, like my kids that sort of eat virtual reality experiences for breakfast every day. Like it's just how things are done now, whether it's Minecraft or what have you, where it's going to just become a more and more obvious medium for people to interact with each other. So early days still, even though Second Life is 15 years in, and really excited about what is going to make possible for all of us in the future.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what the uptake on Sansar has been by the educational community, and where you sort of see the educational opportunities in Sansar as compared to Second Life.
We have not specifically. I mean, we've created a few experiences that are kind of more gives you something to think about when it comes to education. For example, we have some beautifully rendered through photogrammetry spaces from real world tombs in Egypt, for example, just as one example, where you can walk inside in virtual reality and being inside of a tomb that does not have public access, and you can meet people from around the world and discuss the hieroglyphics on the walls and sort of feel what that place might look like. And we have an Apollo museum where you can see the rocket that they sent up in 1965, and sort of the whole Apollo mission and how they went from Earth to the moon and where they landed, and you can travel to the moon and you can do all this in VR and see all of this stuff in sort of full scale with like this incredible multimedia experience of combination of video and audio and sort of this 3D space. And so there, and that was actually created by a third party that worked collaboratively very closely with NASA to get some of those assets. So, you know, the challenge with virtual reality in education is sort of getting this hardware and the systems requirements to, you know, get to a price and comfort and quality of content that it sort of starts to make sense in sort of within the educational budgets, which unfortunately you guys don't get enough of, to be able to have it be used at broad scale. But I would encourage all of you that could to make sure that you at least have a few virtual reality stations, you know, in your institutions, to make sure that people can have access to some of this content, because that it's the most powerful, richest media ever made, and it has kind of this direct response that you get from being inside of that world and having conversation with other people in virtual reality. So for those of you who have not tried virtual reality, I highly encourage you to try it out, whether it's Sansar or something else, just to understand how it can help you in the field of education. I believe it's going to have ultimately a huge impact, because whether it's training or education, the way you can interact with subject matter and with people around the world with regards to that subject matter is something that just cannot be replicated with books or videos or what have you. So incredibly powerful medium. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, there used to be a VR-enabled viewer at one point, and the lab was also looking at a browser-based viewer as well. Are you guys looking at redeveloping or redeploying that particular technology for Second Life at any time soon? It sounds like you're reconsidering that direction.
Yeah, I mean, from early testing and bringing virtual reality into Second Life, we came to the realization that the system requirements and the platform requirements just weren't there for Second Life to go virtual reality. I mean, in order for you to have a constant 90 frames per second experience would be extremely challenging because of the architecture of Second Life. And you know, actually, I was just sort of reflecting on how awesome Second Life is compared to Sansar. Actually, in one aspect, when we first came into this space, the chair I'm sitting in was kind of a bit further away from you, and it was easy for someone to just move it right then and there. Well, in Sansar, you can't do that. You have to go into the dedicated edit mode to do the whole thing, and then publish and what we call, baking a scene or an experience. And that's something we have to do with Sansar to get ultimately a runtime experience that are extremely extremely high performance. And so this awesome thing we have in Second Life where the runtime environment and the editor are sort of synonymous. It's sort of one and the same thing. That would be extremely challenging to do so that is kind of a trade-off between sort of that ease of authoring in real time, kind of has a performance penalty, and so that's a strength that Second Life has, and then Sansar was more optimized to get sort of the frame rates needed for VR, which then means forced us to go down a different path for Sansar. So yeah, we are currently not investing or considering virtual reality as a way to consume Second Life. I mean, third-party viewers, they can give it a shot, but I think they would all have reason, the same challenges we have. browser-based. We did some experiments to see whether basically a server-rendered version that's then streamed to a browser. And also several attempts over the years have been done to do that with Second Life. You may remember OnLive a few years ago had a mobile sort of streamed version of Second Life. We did experiment with that a little bit to see if at least it could sort of ease the onboarding and improve the conversion rate for new users coming into Second Life, where they didn't have to go through the hurdle of installing a client, but they could just sort of walk into Second Life directly from their browser. Unfortunately, the conversion rates didn't sort of prove out. We were all very optimistic that it would really improve conversion rates, but we failed to get the data we wanted. So we sort of stopped with that effort as well. And that would have to be a subscription option, because that means we would be running the GPUs and the CPUs in the cloud to render and then stream the content to the browser. And so that would have to be a subscription option. That's not really that would be extremely costly for us to offer as a free-to-play option. So we might sort of revisit that in the future as cloud GPU technologies become cheaper. But for now, that would be up to third parties to offer those services. We're not working on that inside the lab right now.
Right. Well, okay. Well, at least not for Second Life, but obviously for Sensar, right? VR is one of the principal things that you are moving forward with. Are there other technological improvements that we can look forward to over the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think that the things that we will continue to improve on, that some of it might not be obvious features, like Animesh or environmental control of weather and time and stuff like that. But a lot of things under the hood when it comes to performance, scalability, security, more easily being able to sort of manage bad scripts that do bad things. So sort of, all kinds of griefing vectors that people constantly try to check out. Just to make it a more stable, performant, secure environment is a lot of work. We are gonna, other things like I mentioned earlier is doing things to get what we believe to be a better, more well-balanced revenue model and economy by continually trying to find ways to lower land fees and find other ways to increase fees, and maybe improved subscription programs and stuff to have a better revenue model, if you will.
Yeah. What about accessibility? I know there's a number of groups that we work with on a regular basis, and accessibility is a huge issue, especially with inside education. Are there more improvements that are going to be happening in both Second Life and in Sensar to assist with people with various disabilities?
Sensar has a ways to go to, and might actually be way more restricted with accessibility for some time to come compared to Second Life. And with regards to Second Life, I would need to know more specifically what we can do to make it even better. On top of my head, I can't think of anything because I don't know of a particular thing that's particularly of a particular hindrance for accessibility. So this is an area that'd be great for us to just better know. And I'm not saying the team here doesn't know. I'm just saying on top of my head right now, I don't necessarily know of a particular thing we could do to make it more accessible for a broader audience. But because I know there's already so many ways that Second Life is used, either through our technology or third-party viewers, that actually provide a tremendous amount of accessibility to lots of different people around the world. So But yeah, this is an area where we want to listen and find out if there's how we can do even better.
We had a couple of questions with regards to ease of use, and not so much on the accessibility side, but more just on the content creation side. So, for example, Sansar is, as you said, the Sansar does not have the editor built directly into it, so it requires the use of other tools to create those particular scenes. Is there additional plans in the work to make the ability to create experiences more accessible?
In Sansar, you mean specifically?
In Sansar, yeah. I mean, some people have raised it in Second Life as well, but to be quite honest, I mean, Sansar obviously is the new kid on the block, right? So
yeah. So I think there's sort of degrees of how easy it is to create, and then also how sophisticated the content you can therefore get. And if you take something like Minecraft, it's obviously very easy for people to create content, but you don't necessarily get the sophistication of the types of experiences. You certainly can't create something that we're doing right here, right now in something like Minecraft. So the easier you make it, then maybe you lose out a lot of sort of the flexibility and possibilities of what you can do with the platform. I mean, Second Life has all the tools you need to kind of create something from scratch from within, but although, obviously you have a lot of creators that use third-party tools to import content into Second Life as well. With Sansar, because we have to do so many things, we chose specifically to not focus on the creation of original content, if you will. There's so many great third-party tools, from Blender to Maya to Substance Painter to the list is Photoshop. The list is so long with incredible third-party tools, both free and commercial. And so we were like, let's not try and reinvent all of those different tools, and instead make sure that it's easy for people to bring that content in, at no cost into Sansar. And then Sansar focuses more on how can you lay that content out in a scene, and how can you do, easily light it up, and then how can you start to script things to fit, create some interactive experiences. So it doesn't have sort of a one-stop shop unless, you go buy everything on the Sansar marketplace and then drag them in to make something from scratch. So some people might therefore find that Sansar is a little bit harder to use because you have to rely on third-party tools or the marketplace to get your assets, into your inventory to then put into your experience that you're making. But at the same time, trying to be all of those tools that people want to use would be just an incredibly difficult task for us to deal with when we're already trying to create an economic model, a VR experience, a social experience. Sometimes you just go like, wait a minute, we're trying to re-implement, many billion-dollar companies all in one package, right? We want to be PayPal and Maya or Blender and we're just going, wait a minute, we can't do all of that. So for Second Life, we just chose to not do what I would call original content creation piece, and instead rely on third parties for those kinds of tools. And then, just continually make it easier for people to use those tools and bring that content into Sansar to create content. And then, so that's a choice we made over there. For some people that have gotten used to sort of the Second Life of content creation, if they don't have specific skills to use those third-party type tools, that definitely is a learning curve there to go from Second Life to Sansar. But if you come from the world of knowing how to use those tools already, Sansar is quite comfortable for those people who already know those tools. Anyway, that's you have to prioritize.
No, that's true enough. I've got a couple of questions here, which are more on well, trying to address some challenges with inside education. So many educators run into a bit of a wall with their administrations when it comes to technology such as Second Life and Sansar and other software of environments of this ilk, right? And one of the questions that has been coming up is, what would you suggest to help those educators overcome those hurdles in order to help them move forward? Like, are there things that the lab could do, or I get like marketing summaries or white papers or what have you that could really sort of help get over that administrative challenge?
Yeah, again, I think this is where it would be awesome for Brett to work with you guys to really understand what hurdles and whether it's from your IT departments or from the administration. Is it cost? Is it technology complexities? Is it security? Like what is it that's blocking you from being able to use Second Life or Sansar inside of your institutions or classrooms? And then, yeah, it'd be great to have some sort of catalog of resources that you can use to sort of prove your case, or to make your IT person comfortable with the security, or whatever it might be. So those would be great things for us to understand and see if we can put, together something that helps, not only explain the value proposition, but also how technically it works and why it's secure and why it's safe, and why it makes sense as a medium to improve the ways that you can teach and learn. So I think that's a great idea. We might already have some good material, and maybe we just don't have a good place for you to easily access that or find it. So again, I would maybe Brett speak to this in a bit.
Yeah, I'll just add, I know that we have a wiki page, but frankly, we'll take another look at it. And folks can reach out to me in World or via my email address, which is just brett@lindenlab.com, if they have specifics. I'll just offer a personal note here too, to understand, to show that I understand that dynamic. At the university I've taught with, done demos of both Second Life and Sansar, and in both cases it required a conversation with the IT team, as I'm sure many people in the audience have experienced, just sort of whitelist that. So I think maybe we all can share our learnings together and maybe assemble it in some useful way for other educators, and I'm happy to take the lead on that.
Yeah, Brett, actually, I've got a question then that may actually be more in your Billywick then. From your perspective, are there things that you feel Second Life needs to do to be more attractive to education-based organizations?
It's tough because obviously I'm in this role here. There's a lot of choices that you guys have, and I think that it's been interesting to see. Second Life has been around 15 years, which is just amazing. And so this year there's a lot of new features and things that are going to be rolling out, and I think as a company we'll be sharing sort of that roadmap, in the very near future as well. For the educator community, I think there's a lot of learnings that have already made its way into the product. And I think, what would be really helpful for us is to sort of get a general list through consensus, and maybe if there's an organized way to do that, of what sort of the top features are that you guys feel are lacking, whether they can be acted upon. We'd have to look at resourcing, the return on investment, all the usual things you would expect. So, again, that might be a separate conversation to have about that. From my experience, Second Life has been a great platform for in-world real-time meeting for distance learning uses. There's been some scripted experiences that other educators have created that I've used in the classroom. I think it just depends on the circumstances. But we're also here to listen and to learn. Where are the things that we can be more made aware of and bring that to the product team's attention. Obviously, they have a lot of requests coming their way, and from a lot of different communities, not just the education community. And like any business, we have to see the viable return on investment for any sort of development time that's related to that. But certainly we want to be aware of it, and I'm happy to collect that information and then make sure it gets to the product team.
So if people, so again, you provided your email address, so yeah, I'm assuming therefore there's opportunities that we can again, as an educational community that we can approach. And
yeah, and I think the most effective way to do it, I mean, obviously a scattered approach where I'm getting tons of emails is, I welcome that, but it's also not likely to be as effective. So collectively, if there's a way to sort of organize and even rank order by what the community feels are the most important features lacking or improvements, that would be helpful. How to organize that, I guess, is to be determined. But for me personally, as somebody inside the organization, that would be helpful for me to then communicate it, to the development team. But again, the qualification on that is, there's a lot of requests coming in. The education community is extremely important, but they're also having equivalent conversations like this with other communities as well. So we add it to sort of the list and see where our resources fall and where there are parallels. If something the education community is looking for that also might benefit another community, that's obviously going to be valued, in terms of the development time. But yeah, let's get that information. I'd love to, people can start by reaching out to me at brett@lindenlab.com. Also, I do monitor the official community forums. There's an education forum in particular that is an opportunity. And I'm also one of the admins on the SLED list that I think so many people are a part of. So I do monitor that as well.
Yeah, I bet the forum is probably the best way for everybody to participate in this conversation about the priorities of what would be the most beneficial to your community.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess my last, because I mean there's a couple of other questions here, but I think we've sort of covered them in various different ways. One of the things I'm wondering about though is that every year you've sort of surprised us. You've had an announcement in terms of different things that are sort of upcoming, and obviously the reduction of mainland cost is certainly a big one. Are there other things that we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to sort of let the education community know about?
You want us to let the cat out of the bag on something?
Sure.
Brett, is there something we haven't mentioned that already? I mean, there's a lot of it will kind of be probably spoken about in a week or so. But is there anything?
Yeah, maybe what I'll drop a hint on is, and I mentioned this actually just a moment ago, is, we know a lot of times all of the communities like to sort of have a heads up as to where we're going. And so I mentioned earlier, this is our 15th year. I mean, just think about that, how amazing it is that Second Life is still as vibrant and active as it is 15 years. And we want it to be the same 15 years from now. We want it to evolve. And so one of the things that you can expect soon from us, and it could be in the next week, I don't want to give a specific timeline, but is sort of a public acknowledgement of one, we're kicking off our 15th birthday, but also that there's sort of a roadmap of things that the community can expect as to why to be excited about Second Life, in the coming year. So whether it be features and other types of things, we saw a little hint of that just yesterday with the pricing announcement. That was something that I don't think people necessarily expected, and that's one of many surprises I think that are good that I think people will see this year.
Excellent. Well, Ebbe and Brett, I'd like to thank you very, very much for coming out to our conference again this year. It's always a wonderful opportunity to be able to speak with you. I think we're reaching the top of the hour here, so I'd like to just sort of close out at this point. And again, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
Thank you so much for having us, and I'm happy to stay on a little bit beyond the broadcast, and I'll turn my ears up inside of Second Life here so that the people sitting here I can hang out for a little bit longer and talk with the people sitting in front of me here. And it's great to do it. I think this is my 4th year. I've been CEO now for just a bit over 4 years, and I think I've done this every year now for 4 years running. So
you have,
yeah, and so I look forward to doing it again.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.